Let's continue then with the history of interpretation. We are going to talk about some specific moments, some relevant ones, and let's start then with the first one, which is ancient times. In ancient time, where interpreters, uh, as you can see, were important. We don't even think about that interpreters exist at that moment in ancient times, but they exist. If we talked about interpreters in Egyptian culture, they were like snobs. Talking about culture, the Egyptians were snobs. It means that they were really critical of other cultures besides of them. They believed that only his culture was important and was relevant, and the other cultures were poor or were seen like different from them. So they consider other peoples and languages barbarian or even demonic or sick. So imagine, that's why they were called cultural snobs. So for them, interpreters were sometimes like doctors, because as we can see, they believe that other people has demons or they were sick. So that's why if they want to talk with those people, they need interpreters, and interpreters were considered also as doctor. So that was something really strange. However, there were bilinguals among them, especially from among the peoples along ages from tiers. Um, they really have important at that moment. Interpreters were important, but in Greek culture also, talking about ancient times, interpreters were seen like divine. So contrary with Egyptians, the Greeks believed that interpreters were divine. Interpreters conduct linguistic activities associated with the god Hermes, and Hermes was the god of eloquence. That's why interpreters in Greece were considered divine. If we talked about another important ancient civilization, the Roman Empire, interpreters were also used um, as conductors of negotiation. For example, Julius Caesar allowed their its interpreters to conduct negotiations with delegates representing the rules of the countries. So when Julius Caesar conquered another or a different place, he says to their interpreters, okay, you are going to explain to these people the rules of the Roman Empire. So for all those ancient civilizations, interpreters were really important and necessary. Now the other moment in the history of interpretation is the Middle Ages. If we talked about Middle Ages, there was a really important school that established the first steps in translation and also interpretation. It was the Toledo School of Translator, right? There was a place where all the people that want to be translators go there and learn how to do it. It was a really important place because during the moment of the Crusades, which was a religious war, there were a lot of people that talked in Arabic. So there was another people that talked in Latin or Spanish. So they need interpreters to communicate when they go to the war. So that's why in the School of Toledo, they go there in order to learn how to translate and interpret. Also, at that moment in Middle Ages, language translators start having more and more importance, right? And they started to develop in diplomatic situation and diplomatic interpreting. the other important moment in history was the modern age. And here we can talk about the Spanish conquest that we have in America. And as we already see in the previous presentation, we talked about La Malinche, and also that happened with the expansion of the conquest in America because of the Spaniards, or because another countries like France, like Portuguese people, and also English people that go to America in order to establish their rules. So they meet different people, different Indians that serve as this bridge between the people that go there to conquest and the Indians. Because obviously, if the Spaniards go to Mexico or go to Guatemala or El Salvador, they don't speak the language that the Indians here spoke. That's why they need, or they relied on some interpreters. And this is another important aspect of the history of interpretation, and this is related to the war. Most importantly, we are talking about the ending of the World War One. This is the first and the most contemporaneous appearance of interpretation. After the World War One, there was a conference that was called the Paris Peace Conference, and this meeting was about talking about all the important events that happened during the war. And at that moment, people need to communicate in other languages, not just English, because they were people that talked in other languages like Hungarian, like French, or another type of languages, and they need interpreters to talk and establish some specific diplomatic situations because of the war. Then there was another important conference that happened, that was the Nuremberg trials. The Nuremberg trials, if you can see here, is this is the picture about the Nuremberg trials, and it was a meeting that was about the ending of the World War II, and it was established by the Allied powers, and it was about a military tribunal that judged some criminals, war criminals that did horrible things, that were responsible for the crimes committed during the Holocaust. This tribunal was in charge of judging those criminals, specifically 22 Nazi criminals, and they need interpreters because the judges were from many countries. They were judges from England, from Russia, from France, and Germany. So they need to talk in their own language, but also they need that the other people there in the trial understand them. And that's why there were some interpreters that were hired in order to speak the different language of the judges. It means English, Russian, French, and German. So that was the first simultaneous interpretation act that happened at that moment. So the Nuremberg trial was a really important situation that happened in the history of interpretation, and this is like the model that we follow nowadays, the ones that happened in the Nuremberg trial. So as you can see, we have different moments, different relevant and important moments that built the way that we interpret nowadays.